In the autumn of 1866, amid the fog-laden streets of London, a discovery was made that would forever intertwine the world of art with the shadowed mysteries of death. In a long-abandoned attic nestled above a dilapidated townhouse in the East End, a forgotten sketchbook was unearthed, its aged pages yellowed and brittle, but filled with hauntingly exquisite portraits. Each face, rendered with meticulous detail, bore an uncanny vitality, as though the artist had captured not merely the subject's likeness, but the very essence of their souls. What sent a shiver through those who glimpsed these drawings was a chilling pattern. Each individual depicted had died within days of their portrait being completed. Before we unravel the eerie saga of a young girl whose extraordinary talent for capturing faces becomes entwined with the ominous specter of death, be sure to subscribe and like the video to stay updated on our captivating tales. And tell me, what draws you to stories that explore the mysteries of life and fate as we embark on this haunting journey? The sketchbook's existence was a secret kept by the building's new caretaker, a retired watchmaker named Samuel Gresham, who stumbled upon it while clearing out the attic. Samuel, a man of logic and precision, was initially drawn to the artistry alone. Yet, as he turned the pages, unease crept in, a whisper of something far beyond mere artistic talent. The faces seemed to watch him in silence, their eyes filled with sorrow, fear, or resignation. Word of the sketchbook spread quietly among the few trusted acquaintances Samuel confided in, sparking curiosity and dread in equal measure. At the heart of this enigma was the mysterious figure believed to be the artist, an 11-year-old girl named Clara Whitmore. Known only in passing among the locals, Clara was a spectral presence in her own right, an elusive child whose reputation was woven from whispered tales and uneasy glances. She was said to possess an extraordinary gift, one that defied rational explanation. From a tender age, Clara had been reputed to capture faces with startling accuracy. Yet it was not merely her skill with charcoal and pencil that set her apart. Those who met her spoke of an unsettling aura, eyes that seemed to perceive beyond the physical realm, and a voice that carried the weight of knowledge far beyond her years. London in 1866 was a city suspended between the old world and the new, its streets alive with the relentless hum of industrial progress, yet shadowed by the omnipresence of death. The Victorian era was marked by an intense preoccupation with mortality. Mourning customs had become elaborate rituals, and the rise of spiritualism reflected society's desperate yearning to bridge the chasm between life and the hereafter. Seances were common parlors' entertainments, and mediums claimed to converse with spirits trapped beyond the veil. It was in this fertile ground of fascination and fear that Clara's inexplicable talents took root, her portraits becoming both a source of wonder and a harbinger of doom. The sketchbook contained no signature, no inscription revealing its owner, but local lore quickly pieced together the fragments of Clara's story. Born in 1855 to a modest family in the heart of London, Clara had lived a life marked by quiet tragedy and isolation. Her father died when she was but a child, and her mother, overwhelmed by grief, withdrew from the world, leaving Clara to navigate her extraordinary gift alone. From an early age, Clara's drawings were unlike those of other children, each stroke precise, each shadow and highlight rendered with a mastery that belied her years. But it was the circumstances surrounding her art that truly unsettled those who learned of her. Those she sketched were said to be destined for death soon after their likeness was captured. The Victorian fascination with death was not merely cultural, but deeply psychological. life expectancy remained low, particularly among the working classes, and death was an ever-present companion. Mourning attire, post-mortem photography, and elaborate funerary customs were all attempts to grapple with the finality of loss. In this environment, Clara's portraits were seen as more than art. They were perceived as ominous premonitions. The idea that a child could foresee death challenged the very foundations of contemporary understanding, sparking both fear and intrigue. The sketchbook itself was an artifact of profound significance. Each page revealed portraits drawn with charcoal and ink, faces framed by the fashion of the day, bonnets, lace collars, and cravats, yet eyes that seemed to shimmer with a spectral light. The drawings were accompanied by faint annotations, dates scrawled in a delicate hand that marked the day each portrait was completed. Subsequent research into parish records and death registries confirmed the grim truth. Every subject met their end within a week of their depiction. This chilling correlation lent weight to the whispers that Clara's gift was not merely artistic, but prophetic. Samuel Gresham, grappling with the implications of his find, sought counsel from a circle of acquaintances that included a local clergyman, a physician, and an antiquarian. Each brought their own lens to the mystery. Reverend James Hargrave, a man steeped in the teachings of the Church of England, viewed Clara's talent as a possible divine sign, though one fraught with peril. Dr. Lionel Merrick, a respected surgeon familiar with the limitations of medical science, approached the portraits with skeptical curiosity, pondering whether coincidence or psychological suggestion might explain the phenomena. Meanwhile, Edmund Faraday, the antiquarian, was fascinated by the cultural context, noting the sketchbook's place within the broader Victorian obsession with death and the supernatural. Yet, despite their differing perspectives, all agreed on one thing. Clara Whitmore was a figure caught between worlds. The child's life and work embodied Victorian London's uneasy relationship with mortality and the unknown. She was both a product of her time and an enigma that transcended it. Her portraits challenged the boundary between art and prophecy, calling into question the nature of fate itself. The attic where the sketchbook was found bore silent witness to this eerie legacy. Dust motes danced in shafts of waning sunlight, and the air was thick with the scent of aged paper and forgotten memories. The building's creaking timbers seemed to echo the weight of secrets long buried. It was as if Clara's spirit lingered still, watching from the shadows, her gift captured forever in the fragile pages. This discovery arrived at a moment when London was ripe for such mysteries. The Great Exhibition of 1862 had showcased technological marvels and scientific advancements, yet alongside progress flourished a yearning for the mystical and inexplicable. Spiritualist societies flourished, and the public appetite for tales of the supernatural was insatiable. Clara's portraits, with their uncanny connection to death, tapped into this cultural zeitgeist, becoming a silent testament to the era's deepest fears and fascinations. In the months following the sketchbook's unearthing, Samuel's home became a quiet gathering place for those intrigued by the intersection of art, death, and the supernatural. The portraits sparked heated debates and whispered conversations, each viewer haunted by the faces staring back at them, each wondering about the fate that awaited the living and the power that might lie hidden in the simplest of drawings. Thus began the tale of Clara Whitmore, a story rooted in the fog and shadows of Victorian London, where a child's brush captured not only the visage of her subjects, but the chilling finality of their mortal journey. The sketchbook was more than a collection of drawings. It was a portal into a world where art and death converged, where the line between life and prophecy blurred, and where the mysteries of the soul awaited discovery. Clara Whitmore's early years unfolded against the grim backdrop of mid-19th century London, a city teeming with both promise and hardship. Born in 1855 into a modest household, her childhood was marked by silence and sorrow, shaped profoundly by the untimely death of her father. The loss carved a hollow in the family's life, casting a long shadow over Clara's formative years and leaving her mother adrift in a sea of grief. This sorrowful atmosphere seemed to seep into Clara's very being, nurturing a temperament that was withdrawn and contemplative, as if the weight of loss had settled upon her young shoulders before she had a chance to understand it. From the earliest moments when Clara first held a pencil, it became apparent that her talent was anything but ordinary. Unlike other children whose drawings were whimsical and carefree, Clara's sketches bore the mark of a practiced hand and a discerning eye. Her lines were deliberate, each stroke imbued with a precision that suggested an innate understanding of form and shadow far beyond her tender age. She did not merely replicate what she saw. She captured something deeper, an essence that seemed to shimmer beneath the surface of her subject's features. The local neighbors, initially charmed by the child's artistic gifts, soon noticed an uncanny quality in her work, an almost unsettling accuracy that bordered on the supernatural. It was during these early years that whispers began to circulate about Clara's peculiar ability to see things others could not. She spoke of visions, fleeting glimpses of people's faces, sometimes distorted by anguish or pale with the coldness of death, appearing to her without warning. These experiences frightened Clara, who confided in no one, fearing the judgment and isolation that such revelations might bring. Yet, despite the terror they inspired, these visions became inextricably linked to her art, guiding her hand in ways she struggled to comprehend. Her first portraits, drawn in the modest confines of their cramped London flat, were modest studies of neighbors and passers-by. Yet even then, a pattern began to emerge. Those who sat for Clara's portraits, or whose likeness she sketched in absentia, were often found deceased within weeks, their passing sudden and sometimes shrouded in mystery. This grim coincidence did not go unnoticed. The community's initial admiration for Clara's skill slowly morphed into unease, as whispers of a curse or darker forces took root in the collective imagination. Clara's mother, a woman broken by loss and burdened with the care of her peculiar child, struggled to shield her from the growing suspicion that surrounded them. Yet, she was powerless against the tides of fear and superstition that swirled through their neighborhood. Friends and relatives distanced themselves, and the family became increasingly isolated. The child's withdrawn nature deepened, her eyes reflecting a haunted wisdom that seemed far removed from her years. She would often retreat to the solitude of their small attic room, where she poured herself into her drawings, striving to make sense of the visions that plagued her. The social fabric of Victorian London was unforgiving to those who deviated from the norm, especially children burdened with strange gifts or behaviors. Clara's eerie talent made her a subject of hushed conversations and furtive glances among neighbors who did not understand the nature of her affliction. In a society steeped in religious doctrine and rationalism, the notion that a child could foresee death was met with a mixture of fear, disbelief, and, for some, outright hostility. The tension between scientific progress and lingering superstition created a climate in which Clara's abilities could neither be openly discussed nor properly addressed. Despite the isolation, Clara's artistic output continued to grow in both volume and intensity. Her drawings became more frequent, each one a silent testament to the faces she saw in her visions. With no formal training, Clara's technique evolved through a self-taught discipline, guided by an inner compulsion that she could neither explain nor resist. The charcoal and ink on paper were her only means of communication, a way to externalize the images that haunted her mind. The local clergy and community leaders, upon hearing of the child's abilities, debated her nature with a mix of concern and intrigue. Some viewed her as a potential prophetess, an innocent vessel touched by divine insight, while others feared she might be possessed by malevolent forces. Attempts were made to intervene, prayers were offered and religious counsel sought. But Clara remained an enigma, her gift impervious to the comforts and condemnations of faith. Medical understanding of psychological phenomena was rudimentary at best during this era, and Clara's experiences found no place within the emerging frameworks of science. The child was never subjected to clinical examination or psychiatric evaluation, as her family lacked the means and knowledge to pursue such avenues. Instead, she remained an isolated figure, navigating the liminal space between the real and the spectral, largely unaided. Anecdotes from neighbors recount moments when Clara would suddenly cease speaking, her gaze fixed on some invisible point, as though watching a scene unfolding beyond the walls. Soon after, she would retreat to her sketchbook, furiously capturing the faces that had appeared to her. One such account tells of Mrs. Abernathy, a kindly widow who lived down the street, who recalled Clara drawing her in the dim light of a cold winter evening. Within days, Mrs. Abernathy fell ill and passed away quietly in her sleep. Such stories fueled the growing aura of mystery and dread that enveloped the child. Clara's relationship with her mother was complex and fraught with unspoken tensions. The mother, consumed by her own grief and increasingly fearful of her daughter's abilities, vacillated between protectiveness and despair. She struggled to reconcile the child she loved with the dark reputation that followed her like a shadow. Their home became a sanctuary and a prison, a place where Clara's talents could flourish unseen, but where the outside world's judgment loomed large. Schooling for Clara was sporadic and informal. The stigma attached to her strange gift made integration with peers difficult, and she was often left to her own devices. In solitude, Clara's art became both a refuge and a burden. Each portrait was a silent witness to the inevitable, a reminder that the faces she captured were transient, and that the line between life and death was thinner than anyone dared admit. The year 1865 marked a turning point. Clara's drawings began to attract attention beyond her immediate community. Rumors spread that the child possessed a prophetic gift, and those in London who were drawn to the occult or fascinated by the supernatural sought her out. Some came out of curiosity, others with a desperate hope to glimpse their own futures or those of loved ones. Clara's reluctant fame grew, though she remained a figure apart, seemingly trapped in a world of visions and silence. Local newspapers, ever hungry for sensational stories, caught wind of Clara's reputation, though their accounts were often tinged with skepticism or sensationalism. Reports described the girl as a child touched by a dark gift, or a young prophetess haunted by death. These portrayals only deepened the aura of mystery and fear surrounding her, alienating her further from the community that once nurtured her. Within the confines of her small room, Clara continued to wrestle with her talent. Her drawings grew more detailed and expressive, capturing not only the physical likeness, but the emotional resonance of her subjects. Each portrait was a silent communion, an attempt to understand the inevitability that lay ahead. She was burdened not only with the knowledge of her visions, but with the helplessness of witnessing death's approach, without the power to intervene. The fragile balance of Clara's existence was maintained by her art, and the few moments of quiet connection she shared with those who dared look beyond the fear her gift inspired. Yet, beneath the surface, a profound loneliness persisted. A child grappling with a destiny she neither chose nor understood, trapped in a world where every line drawn was a step closer to the final farewell. Thus, Clara Whitmore's early life was a portrait of isolation, talent, and tragedy, set against the stark realities of Victorian London. Her artistic gift, intertwined with visions of death, marked her as both a wonder and an outcast, a child whose drawings foretold the fragile boundary separating life from the unknown. In this crucible of grief and mystery, Clara's journey was only beginning, a journey that would soon reveal the full extent of her extraordinary and unsettling gift. By the spring of 1865, Clara Whitmore's strange and unsettling talent had begun to draw attention far beyond the cramped streets of her East London neighborhood, stirring a mixture of awe, fear, and skepticism among those who encountered her work. The portraits she created, each imbued with a haunting clarity and an eerie prescience, were no longer mere curiosities whispered about in hushed tones, but had become a subject of fascination for townsfolk and local authorities alike. Word spread that the young girl's drawings seemed to predict death, a claim that blurred the lines between supernatural gift and macabre coincidence. The growing reputation that enveloped Clara was as much a reflection of Victorian society's fixation on mortality as it was a response to the inexplicable nature of her art. London, still grappling with the aftershocks of a cholera epidemic and the ever-present threat of disease, was fertile ground for stories that interwove the mystical with the morbid. In parlors and pubs, debates simmered on whether Clara was a prophetess, touched by divine insight, or a bearer of a dark curse. The spiritualist movement, flourishing across England and championing communication with the dead, found in Clara's portraits a tangible manifestation of their beliefs and their fears. Local doctors and clergy, faced with the growing notoriety of Clara's work, found themselves divided. Reverend James Hargrave, a man steeped in Anglican doctrine yet open to the mysteries of faith, viewed Clara's ability as potentially supernatural, but fraught with peril. To him, the child was a vessel of divine warning, though one burdened by the heavy responsibility of foretelling death. He counseled caution and prayer, hoping to shield Clara from the spiritual dangers he believed her gift entailed. Conversely, Dr. Lionel Merrick, a pragmatic surgeon familiar with the medical limitations of his time, approached the phenomenon with skepticism tempered by curiosity. He questioned whether the supposed prophetic power was merely a tragic coincidence, amplified by human tendency to find patterns in randomness. Merrick proposed that psychological factors might be at play. Perhaps Clara's acute observational skills allowed her to detect subtle signs of illness that others missed, and her drawings merely captured the inevitable. Yet, even he could not dismiss the chilling accuracy with which the portraits presage death. This tension between faith and reason played out publicly as well as privately. Newspapers occasionally ran sensationalized pieces on the child prophetess of London, alternating between reverence and ridicule. Some articles warned of the dangers of superstition, while others speculated on the possibility of clairvoyance, fueling the public's morbid fascination. Clara herself remained largely silent amidst the growing storm, her young mind burdened by the weight of knowledge she neither sought nor fully grasped. Amid this swirling attention, Clara's personal struggles deepened. The burden of her talent was not merely external, but profoundly internal. She was haunted by the faces she was compelled to draw, faces that seemed etched with the inevitability of fate. The act of sketching was both a compulsion and a torment, a silent acknowledgement of the fragility of life and the inexorable approach of death. Some nights, Clara would awaken screaming, visions of spectral figures and anguished expressions flooding her dreams, blurring the boundaries between waking and sleeping worlds. Her isolation intensified as neighbors grew wary, some avoiding her altogether, while others approached her with a mix of dread and desperation. Individuals rumored to be ill sought her out, hoping for a glimpse of their own portrait, either to confirm or defy the grim predictions. In these encounters, Clara's demeanor was often distant, her eyes reflecting the heavy toll of her gift. She was a child caught in a maelstrom of forces beyond her control, unable to reconcile the innocence of youth with the dark knowledge she carried. The community's response was a complex tapestry of fear, fascination, and superstition. Some viewed Clara as a cursed figure, a symbol of death's inescapable grasp, while others whispered that she was touched by witchcraft or other malevolent influences. These suspicions, though unspoken in polite society, permeated the atmosphere, further isolating the child and her family. At the same time, there were those who sought to protect her, recognizing the tragedy inherent in her predicament and the injustice of casting blame on a child. Among those intrigued by Clara's story were a handful of scholars and occult enthusiasts who began to view her as a living link to the spiritual realm. They approached her with a mixture of scientific curiosity and mystical reverence, hoping to understand the source of her visions. These encounters, however, were fraught with tension. Clara, wary and overwhelmed, often retreated into silence, unwilling or unable to explain the origins of her gift. At home, the strain was palpable. Clara's mother, already fragile from years of grief and social isolation, struggled to balance protectiveness with the harsh realities confronting her daughter. She sought solace in religion, praying for deliverance and hoping to shield Clara from the community's suspicion. Yet, the mother's own fears and uncertainties sometimes manifested as overbearing concern, pushing Clara further into solitude. Schooling remained sporadic and informal, as Clara's reputation made integration with other children difficult. Peers viewed her with a mixture of superstition and fear, and she was often the subject of exclusion or bullying. The normal milestones of childhood, play, friendship, carefree learning, were overshadowed by the weight of her gift and the reactions it provoked. Clara's world was one of shadows and silence, punctuated only by the scratch of pencil on paper. Despite these hardships, Clara's artistry evolved. Her portraits grew in emotional depth and technical mastery, revealing a nuanced understanding of human expression and mortality. Each drawing was a silent elegy, capturing not only the physical features of her subjects, but the intangible aura that surrounded them. This evolution did not go unnoticed by those who studied her work, who marveled at the way a child could convey such profound emotion and foreboding. Yet, Clara herself remained a mystery, a young girl burdened by a gift she neither desired nor comprehended fully. She grappled with the knowledge that her art was a harbinger of death, a burden that alienated her from the living and tethered her to the realm of the departed. The inevitability she sensed in each portrait weighed heavily on her psyche, casting a pall over her days and nights. The tension between skepticism and belief, between science and superstition, mirrored the broader conflicts of Victorian society. Clara Whitmore, in her youth and solitude, embodied these contradictions. She was a child gifted and cursed, a prophetess and an outcast, whose life and art challenged the boundaries of understanding. As her portraits continued to circulate, the question remained: was Clara truly a visionary, touched by the divine or the uncanny? Or was she merely a child caught in the tragic patterns of fate and coincidence? This question haunted those who encountered her story, fueling debates that blurred the line between rational inquiry and mystical wonder. In this turbulent time, Clara's existence became a focal point for Victorian anxieties about death, destiny, and the unknown. Her art was not simply a reflection of talent, but a mirror held up to a society grappling with mortality and the afterlife. The faces she drew were echoes of the era's deepest fears and hopes, each portrait a silent testament to the fragile boundary separating life from death. Through it all, Clara remained a figure of poignant contradiction, a child burdened with knowledge beyond her years, caught between worlds, and compelled to bear witness to the final moments of those she sketched. Her story was unfolding, a delicate and haunting tale poised on the edge of revelation and tragedy. In the waning months of 1866, Clara Whitmore's uncanny gift reached a crescendo that would shatter the fragile boundaries between fascination and fear, propelling her from whispered local curiosity to the center of a dark and unsettling drama. The child's portraits, once the subject of quiet speculation, now drew the eyes of the city's elite, as well as its most anxious citizens, who saw in her drawings a direct and terrifying link to death itself. What had been a secret burden became an inevitable public spectacle, one that would culminate in a series of events as mysterious as they were tragic. During this period, Clara was commissioned, or rather, compelled, to create portraits of several prominent citizens whose sudden illnesses or precarious conditions made them subjects of whispered concern. The requests came not only from families desperate for reassurance, but also from influential figures intrigued by the possibility of glimpsing their own fates. Despite her youth, Clara acquiesced, driven by an internal compulsion she could neither resist nor fully understand. Each portrait was executed with the same chilling precision that had defined her earlier work, the faces emerging from her charcoal and ink with an almost spectral clarity. The aftermath was as swift as it was devastating. Within days of the completion of each portrait, the subjects succumbed to sudden and often inexplicable deaths. The timing was undeniable, and the pattern impossible to dismiss. The city's whispers grew louder, transforming into fearful murmurs and then outright panic. The idea that an 11-year-old girl could predict, or worse, herald, death unsettled a society already obsessed with mortality and the supernatural. Among the most notable cases was that of Sir Reginald Pemberton, a respected magistrate whose imposing portrait by Clara was completed on a crisp October afternoon. Within 4 days, Sir Reginald was found lifeless in his study, the cause of death officially recorded as apoplexy, but shrouded in rumors of a mysterious malaise. The suddenness of his passing, coupled with the existence of the drawing, sent shockwaves through London's social circles. Similar fates befell Lady Harriet Collins, a philanthropist known for her charitable works, and Dr. Samuel Whitmore, a distant relative of Clara's mother, whose own demise seemed to mark a cruel irony. As the deaths mounted, the community's reaction shifted from curiosity to dread. Clara's home became a place avoided by many, the air thick with suspicion and unspoken fears. Gossip painted her alternately as a cursed child, a witch, or a vessel of dark forces beyond human control. Even those who had once admired her talent recoiled, unwilling to confront the terrifying implications of her gift. In the midst of this escalating fear, Clara remained an inscrutable figure. Her demeanor grew increasingly withdrawn, eyes darting nervously, hands trembling as she confronted the relentless demands of her ability. The psychological toll was profound. She was haunted not only by the faces she drew, but by the knowledge that her art was inextricably linked to death's arrival. The weight of this burden pressed heavily upon her young mind, casting a shadow over every waking moment. The climax of this dark chapter came with Clara's final known series of portraits, drawings of several prominent citizens whose identities were carefully documented in the now infamous sketchbook. Each portrait was completed with the same haunting detail, yet the last among them was unlike any before. It depicted an unknown figure, seated in an empty chair, the face unfinished and obscured by shadow. This final sketch, found beside an empty room in Clara's modest home, would become the subject of endless speculation and dread. Shortly after completing this mysterious drawing, Clara vanished without a trace. Her disappearance was sudden and complete, baffling the community and those who had sought to understand her gift. No farewell note was found, no indication of her destination or intent. The empty chair in her room, beside the unfinished portrait, became a chilling symbol of absence and unanswered questions. Rumors quickly spread to explain her vanishing. Some whispered that Clara had transcended the mortal realm, taken by death itself to join the souls she had so often portrayed. Others speculated that she had fled, overwhelmed by the weight of her gift and the fear it inspired, seeking refuge far from prying eyes. A few darker tales suggested that sinister forces had claimed her, that her disappearance was part of a larger, more malevolent design. The immediate aftermath of Clara's disappearance plunged the local community into a state of uneasy silence. The sketchbook, once a secret held tightly by her family, became a relic of dread, passed cautiously between hands and locked away from public view. The portraits, imbued with the weight of prophecy and loss, were seldom spoken of openly, their presence a reminder of a child whose art had bridged the worlds of life and death. Despite the silence, the impact of Clara's final works resonated deeply. The unfinished portrait of the unknown figure became a focal point for speculation and fear, a haunting emblem of the unresolved mysteries surrounding her life and abilities. Its shadowed features seemed to invite contemplation of the unknown, a mirror reflecting humanity's deepest anxieties about mortality and destiny. During this tumultuous period, reports began to surface of strange occurrences around Clara's former home and the locations where her final subjects had passed away. Witnesses described fleeting shadows, whispers carried on the wind, and an oppressive atmosphere that defied explanation. These accounts, though anecdotal, contributed to the growing mythology surrounding Clara Whitmore, transforming her story into a legend woven from threads of fear, loss, and the supernatural. The intertwining of Clara's fate with the deaths she seemingly foretold challenged Victorian society's efforts to reconcile faith, reason, and the mysteries of existence. Clergy and scientists alike grappled with the implications, unable to provide definitive answers. The unanswered questions surrounding Clara's disappearance and the unfinished portrait fueled debates that blurred the lines between skepticism and belief, between the known and the unknowable. In the months following her vanishing, those who had known Clara or had been touched by her art, struggled to come to terms with the void she left behind. The child who had borne the burden of prophecy had become an enigma, a ghostly presence lingering at the edges of memory and history. Her final act, both in life and disappearance, underscored the fragile boundary between the living and the dead, between knowledge and mystery. The narrative of Clara Whitmore during these final months of 1866 is one of rising tension, tragic loss, and haunting absence. Her portraits, once cherished for their beauty, became grim tokens of fate, and her disappearance an enduring puzzle that challenged the limits of understanding. The empty chair beside the unfinished portrait stands as a silent testament to a story left incomplete, a mystery that beckons to be unraveled but remains shrouded in shadow. Thus, the final chapter of Clara's known life closed not with resolution, but with an unsettling void, a disappearance that would echo through time, inspiring fear, speculation, and a lingering sense of the uncanny. The events of late 1866 cast a long shadow over Victorian London, cementing Clara Whitmore's place as a figure both tragic and transcendent, a child whose art and fate remain intertwined with the enduring mysteries of death and destiny. In the years following Clara Whitmore's mysterious disappearance in late 1866, the small London community that had once whispered about the child prophetess found itself gripped by a complex mixture of fear, fascination, and folklore that would endure for decades. The immediate shock of her vanishing gave way to a profound unease, as neighbors and townsfolk struggled to comprehend the legacy she left behind. A legacy embodied in a fragile sketchbook filled with haunting portraits and the chilling knowledge that each drawing had foretold a death. The town's reaction was both a mirror of Victorian anxieties and a crucible in which myth and reality intertwined. The community's response was tumultuous and deeply divided. Some viewed Clara as a cursed figure, a child touched by forces dark and malevolent, whose very presence had brought misfortune upon those she sketched. These individuals whispered of witchcraft and unnatural pacts, their fears fueled by the era's superstitions and the palpable sense of dread that clung to her memory. Accusations, though never openly voiced, lingered in the shadows, casting a pall over her family and any who had associated with her. Others offered a more sympathetic interpretation, regarding Clara as a tragic prophetess, burdened with a gift she neither sought nor understood. To these, she was an innocent caught in the cruel machinery of fate, her talent a sorrowful glimpse into the inescapable realities of death. This perspective found expression in quiet acts of remembrance by those who had witnessed Clara's gentle nature and the torment she endured. For them, the sketchbook was a sacred relic, a testament to a child who bore the weight of mortality in her small hands. Folklore soon blossomed around Clara's story, weaving a rich tapestry of tales that blurred fact and fiction. Stories circulated of individuals who sought out her portraits in desperate attempts to glimpse their own destinies, hoping to find reassurance or to cheat death itself. Some claimed that possessing a drawing offered protection, while others insisted it was a curse, sealing the subject's fate with grim inevitability. These contradictory beliefs echoed the Victorian fascination with the supernatural and the era's conflicting desires to understand and control the unknown. The sketchbook itself became an object of both reverence and fear, passing through a succession of hands often reluctant to remain its keeper for long. It was hidden away in dusty attics, locked in private collections, and sometimes lost to the chaos of time, only to resurface intermittently with renewed interest and apprehension, Each rediscovery rekindled the aura of mystery surrounding Clara and her prophetic art, ensuring that her story remained alive in whispers and shadows. This period also saw the emergence of tales that blurred the lines between history and myth. Some recounted sightings of a pale girl wandering the streets at dusk, clutching a sketchbook, her eyes distant and sorrowful. Others spoke of ghostly apparitions near the sites where Clara's subjects had died, shadows flickering in candlelight, or unexplained chill breezes that swept through empty rooms. These stories, though anecdotal and unverifiable, contributed to the growing legend of Clara Whitmore as a spectral figure caught between worlds. The broader Victorian context played a crucial role in shaping these narratives. The late 19th century was a time of profound social and scientific transformation, yet the shadow of death remained ever present. Mourning customs became elaborate rituals, and spiritualist movements flourished, reflecting society's deep yearning to connect with the departed. Clara's story tapped directly into these cultural currents, becoming a symbol of the era's complex relationship with mortality and the afterlife. Local historians and folklorists began to document Clara's tale, preserving it as a cautionary legend and a subject of fascination. Their accounts often emphasized the child's innocence and the tragic nature of her abilities, framing her as both victim and seer. These retellings varied in detail and tone, sometimes romanticizing her gift, at other times highlighting the darker implications. The sketchbook, when mentioned, was portrayed as a mystical artifact, imbued with power and mystery beyond ordinary understanding. Despite the passage of time, Clara's story remained a potent force within the community's collective memory. Annual remembrances, some informal and others more structured, were held by those who sought to honor her or to seek closure for the lingering fears her life had inspired. These gatherings often involved candlelit vigils and the sharing of stories, creating a ritualistic space where grief, hope, and curiosity converged. The enduring fascination with Clara Whitmore extended beyond local boundaries, capturing the attention of scholars, artists, and paranormal enthusiasts from across England and beyond. Her tale inspired a range of artistic expressions, poetry, plays, and paintings that explored the intersection of childhood innocence, death, and the supernatural. In these works, Clara became a muse and a metaphor, embodying the fragile boundary between life and the unknown. Yet, for all the attention and interpretation, the true nature of Clara's gift and fate remained elusive. The sketchbook, with its silent faces and cryptic annotations, offered no easy answers. Its pages whispered of lives cut short, and of a child burdened by visions no one else could see. The community's collective memory, shaped by fear and reverence, preserved the enigma even as it sought to understand it. In the closing decades of the 19th century, as Victorian society moved toward modernity, Clara's story persisted as a haunting reminder of the era's complex dance with death and destiny. Her portraits, once feared and misunderstood, became relics of a bygone age, symbols of a world where art and prophecy converged in the hands of a child. The folklore that surrounded her evolved with each retelling, reflecting the changing fears and hopes of successive generations. Thus, the aftermath of Clara Whitmore's life and disappearance was not merely a historical footnote, but a living narrative, a story woven into the fabric of community identity and cultural memory. It was a tale of innocence lost and mysteries that defied explanation, a testament to the enduring human desire to find meaning in the face of mortality. Through the layers of fear, fascination, and folklore, Clara's legacy endured, a spectral presence hovering at the edges of history. Her story invited reflection on the fragile nature of life and the enigmatic forces that shape destiny, reminding all who heard it that some mysteries, like the faces in her sketchbook, remain forever just beyond reach. By the mid-20th century, the tale of Clara Whitmore and her haunting sketchbook had receded into the shadows of history, known only to a select few who recognized its eerie significance. Yet, like the flickering embers of a long-forgotten fire, the story was destined to kindle anew. In the decades spanning 1950 to 2000, Clara's legacy underwent a remarkable resurgence, propelled by chance rediscoveries, evolving cultural attitudes toward the paranormal, and the burgeoning field of interdisciplinary inquiry that sought to reconcile art, psychology, and mystery. The sketchbook itself resurfaced in 1953, when an antiques dealer in London stumbled upon the fragile tome, tucked away in an estate sale from a long-deceased collector. Its worn leather cover and brittle pages belied the powerful aura that seemed to emanate from within. Upon recognizing the distinctive portraits and accompanying annotations, the dealer alerted a small circle of historians and paranormal researchers who immediately grasped the magnitude of the find. The book's re-emergence ignited a wave of interest that rippled through academic and esoteric communities alike. Historians approached the sketchbook as a rare artifact of Victorian culture, a window into the era's complex relationship with death, art, and spirituality. They meticulously catalogued its contents, cross-referencing the dates and subjects against historical records. The chilling pattern persisted. Each portrait depicted an individual who had died within days of their likeness being captured. This undeniable correlation fascinated scholars, who debated its implications in academic journals and conferences dedicated to Victorian studies and cultural history. Simultaneously, the rise of paranormal research in post-war Britain provided a fertile ground for renewed investigation into Clara's story. Parapsychologists and psychical researchers viewed the sketchbook as a possible case study in precognition and psychic phenomena. Experimental methods were applied, ranging from psychological profiling of Clara's known history to comparative analyses of her drawings with other purportedly prophetic art. These investigations, though inconclusive, sparked spirited debates on the nature of human consciousness and the potential for extrasensory perception. The scientific community, while largely skeptical, could not entirely dismiss the uncanny accuracy of Clara's portraits. Forensic analysts employed emerging techniques to examine the drawing's materials and methods, confirming their authenticity and age. Psychological experts pondered whether Clara's gift might be explained through heightened observational skills combined with subconscious intuition, or if a more profound, unexplained phenomenon was at play. The ambiguity fueled ongoing discourse, blurring the lines between empirical inquiry and metaphysical speculation. This renewed interest extended beyond the halls of academia and into popular culture. Clara Whitmore's story inspired a variety of creative works: novels that wove fictional narratives around her life, theatrical productions that dramatized her final days, and documentaries that explored the intersection of art and the supernatural. These portrayals often emphasized the tragic innocence of the child and the haunting power of her gift, captivating audiences and embedding Clara's tale within the tapestry of British folklore. Artists, too, found in Clara's legacy a wellspring of inspiration. Visual and literary creators grappled with themes of mortality, destiny, and the unseen forces that shape human existence. Exhibitions featured reproductions of her portraits, alongside contemporary works exploring similar motifs, inviting viewers to confront the unsettling question of what lies beyond the veil of life. In this way, Clara's art transcended its original context, becoming a symbol of the enduring human fascination with death and the mysteries that surround it. Paranormal enthusiasts and spiritualist groups embraced Clara's story as evidence of the soul's persistence and the permeability of the boundary between life and death. Seances and gatherings sometimes featured readings or displays inspired by her work, with participants seeking connection or insight through her prophetic legacy. Such practices, while outside the scope of conventional science, underscored the continuing cultural resonance of Clara's life and art. Amidst this resurgence, the sketchbook itself became a subject of intense scrutiny and debate. Custodians of the artifact grappled with questions of preservation, access, and interpretation. Some advocated for its display in museums as a testament to Victorian artistry and cultural history, while others argued for restricted access due to its unsettling reputation and the ethical considerations surrounding its prophetic content. The tension between public interest and reverence for the mysterious underscored the complexities inherent in handling such a unique and enigmatic object. Technological advances also played a role in deepening understanding of Clara's work. High-resolution imaging and spectral analysis revealed subtle details in the drawings, layers of shading, corrections, and annotations that offered clues to her process and mindset. These insights enriched interpretations of the portraits, suggesting a deliberate and methodical approach that belied the spontaneity often attributed to child artists. The interplay between technique and intuition became a focal point for scholars seeking to unravel the enigma. Throughout the latter half of the 20th century, Clara Whitmore's story became a nexus where disciplines converged. History, psychology, art, and the paranormal intersected in a dialogue as complex as the child's own life. This interdisciplinary engagement reflected broader cultural shifts toward embracing mystery alongside reason, acknowledging that some phenomena resist simple explanation. Yet, despite the wealth of study and speculation, Clara's true nature and the source of her prophetic talent remained elusive. The sketchbook's silent faces continued to captivate and confound, embodying questions that transcended time. Was Clara a conduit of the supernatural, a child with extraordinary intuition, or a tragic figure ensnared by coincidence and circumstance? Each perspective found advocates, but none could claim definitive answers. This enduring ambiguity contributed to Clara's lasting cultural impact. Her story became emblematic of humanity's quest to comprehend mortality and destiny, a narrative that spoke to universal fears and hopes. The tension between skepticism and belief, between empirical evidence and the unknown, mirrored the broader human experience, confronting the inevitable. In this era of rediscovery and reinterpretation, Clara Whitmore's life and work transcended their origins. They became a lens through which to examine the interplay of art, death, and the mysteries that lie beyond human understanding. Her portraits, once feared as omens of death, now served as profound meditations on the fragility and enigma of life itself. As the 20th century drew to a close, Clara's story, rooted in a dusty attic, drawn with charcoal and ink, remained vibrant and unresolved, a haunting testament to a child whose gift illuminated the shadowed boundary between life and death. The renewed interest in her work ensured that her legacy would continue to inspire inquiry, creativity, and reflection well into the future, inviting each generation to ponder the mysteries she so hauntingly captured. The story of Clara Whitmore, born from the shadows of Victorian London and etched into the fragile pages of a mysterious sketchbook, remains a haunting enigma that continues to captivate and confound. Decades of scrutiny, speculation, and reinterpretation have yielded a tapestry of theories attempting to explain the child's extraordinary and unsettling gift. A gift that seemed to blur the boundaries between life and death, art and prophecy. Yet, despite the many lenses through which her story has been examined, Clara's true nature remains elusive, a spectral figure at the crossroads of history and myth. Among the myriad explanations proposed, one of the most enduring centers on the notion of psychic ability, or precognition. Advocates of this theory suggest that Clara possessed an innate capacity to glimpse the future, a rare and inexplicable talent that manifested through her art. Her charcoal and ink portraits, they argue, were more than mere likenesses. They were windows into destiny, capturing the final moments of those she depicted. This perspective aligns with the Victorian spiritualist context in which Clara lived, a time rife with belief in mediums, seances, and communication with the beyond. To these scholars and enthusiasts, Clara's gift was a tragic blessing, a burden of insight that isolated her from a world unprepared for such revelations. Conversely, psychological interpretations have sought to ground Clara's abilities in the realm of human cognition and perception. Some experts propose that her acute observational skills, combined with subconscious cues gleaned from her subject's appearance and behavior, enabled her to intuit impending death. In an era plagued by disease and poor health standards, subtle physical signs might have provided Clara with insights others overlooked. This theory frames her portraits less as supernatural omens and more as manifestations of heightened intuition and empathy, albeit one wrapped in profound tragedy. Others have ventured into the metaphysical, positing that Clara's gift was a form of spiritual communion, a bridge between the living and the dead. Her drawings, according to this view, were not only prophetic, but also acts of remembrance and connection, capturing the souls of the departed before their passage. This interpretation resonates with the folklore that grew around her, where Clara became a liminal figure existing between worlds, a child who bore witness to the transient nature of life. Such theories often draw from cultural and religious frameworks that embrace the notion of spirits lingering and interacting with the mortal realm. Skeptics, meanwhile, caution against ascribing mystical significance to what may be coincidental or the product of selective memory. They highlight the human tendency to find patterns, especially in matters as emotionally charged as death, where confirmation bias can create the illusion of foresight. From this vantage, Clara's story is a compelling narrative shaped by tragedy and cultural anxieties, amplified over time through retellings and the mystique of her art. The sketchbook, while undeniably remarkable, becomes a historical artifact reflecting Victorian preoccupations rather than evidence of the supernatural. Beyond these theories, Clara's influence extends into the realms of art and culture, where she has become a symbol of the mysterious interplay between creativity and mortality. Her portraits, with their delicate lines and haunting gazes, invite reflection on the fragility of existence and the human desire to capture and understand the ephemeral. Artists and writers have drawn inspiration from her life, exploring themes of innocence lost, the burden of knowledge, and the thin veil separating life from death. In this way, Clara's legacy transcends the specifics of her story, touching on universal human experiences. The paradox of Clara Whitmore is that she is at once a historical figure and a mythic presence. Her life and work challenge the boundaries of empirical knowledge, inviting contemplation of the unknown forces that shape destiny and the limits of human understanding. She embodies the tension between faith and reason, the seen and the unseen, offering no easy answers but compelling questions. Her enduring mystery continues to resonate within artistic and paranormal communities, where debates about her gift and fate persist. Some claim encounters with her spectral presence, descriptions of a pale girl clutching a sketchbook, her eyes filled with sorrow and secrets. Others speak of dreams inspired by her portraits, or inexplicable feelings of connection when viewing reproductions of her work. These experiences, though subjective, contribute to the ongoing mythos surrounding Clara, blurring the lines between history and the supernatural. The story of Clara Whitmore also serves as a cautionary tale about the costs of extraordinary gifts, especially when born by the young and vulnerable. Her life reflects the isolating effects of knowledge and the societal challenges faced by those who deviate from normative experience. In this light, Clara's narrative is not only about death and prophecy, but also about compassion and the human need to understand and support those burdened by difference. As scholars continue to study the sketchbook and the sparse details of Clara's life, the call to delve deeper into historical enigmas grows stronger. Her story encourages a multidisciplinary approach, combining art history, psychology, cultural studies, and paranormal research to approach the mystery from all angles. Each new discovery or interpretation adds layers to the complex portrait of a child who saw beyond the veil. Clara Whitmore's life and work remain a haunting invitation to explore the unknown, to question the limits of perception, and to confront the profound mysteries at the heart of existence. Her portraits stand as silent witnesses to the fragile boundary between life and death, each face a story unfinished, each gaze a bridge to the beyond. In the end, Clara Whitmore is more than a figure of Victorian legend. She is a symbol of humanity's eternal quest to comprehend destiny, mortality, and the unseen forces that shape our world. Her haunting legacy endures, urging us to look beyond the surface, to listen to the silent stories that art can tell, and to embrace the mysteries that life and death inevitably hold.